Good evening, Carpheadbangers. Welcome to Cracking the Code. First of all, I'd just like to thank everybody who's purchased the DVD. It really does mean a lot. The reason I've come down this road, Carpheadbangers, I just feel as the right people will get to see the work that I've put in trying to create what I've done. To be fair, it's been in the making for quite a few years, and it's took me a long time to present it to the way I have with yourselves. So I hope you enjoy it, because I know you worked hard for your money, so it means a lot, to be fair. What's Cracking the Code all about? Well, I'm sure we've all been on the bank and we're all looking for the many signs. And to be fair, what I present to you is many interpretations, so if you feel that you've seen something similar to what you've seen or you have a different interpretation, then please let me know, because really it's all about, trying to understand what we think we see. And I hope I've done a good job in regarding what I think I've seen, because for me, I think the footage is mind-blowing, and it's certainly unique. It's certainly never been seen before, and I feel it tells a story to what's going on in the lake. I'm sure we've all got different experiences, so it's just a case of, if you feel you want to share it with me, then I'm quite happy to listen to what you've got to say, because it's something I'm really interested in. For me, we've all got patterns in life. We're all on a cycle in regarding what we're doing within ourselves, within life, and it's no different for Carp, in my opinion. They have a cycle within their lakes, how they go about themselves, how they need to survive, how they need to interact with other species and things like that. And what you come to learn when you're going around to different lakes, every lake is unique in itself, not every lake's the same. So obviously trying to crack the codes, going to many different lakes is far harder than actually spending a lot of time on a lake that you might want to enjoy and just fish, sort of thing. So, but what I've come to learn by going to different lakes, how they come to interact with each other, just the vibrancy, the different species, because they all interconnect with each other in one way or another, because the cycle of life going from one season to the next is about progression, sustaining itself. How do these fish survive? How do they sustain themselves? Because they certainly don't just all eat boilies or pellet or sweet corn and things like that. As much as that, they do eat all these different types of baits that we give them. But there's an ecosystem in itself within a lake, and depending on the diversity of the lake, that lake will act in a certain way throughout the season, depending on the different species which were in the lake. I've been to a lake where there's nothing but carp in it, and a few pike, and then I've been fished in triple SI waters, which have got basically all the species in it except sturgeon, and the abundance of life is just second to none. So I know that lake and the nature of that lake works totally different from one to the other. So really going to these different lakes and seeing all these different things going on in these lakes and filming it has told me a story of what's going on. So hopefully I've captured, hopefully I've done a good job in what I've captured, so to speak. And you get to see the story I'm trying to tell you. Now, how I'm going to explain in the footage of you're going to get to see Carpheadbangers, there'll be like sort of 3 different stages in it. In what you'll see some footage which will be slow motion. You'll see some footage where I've just cut the clip, and then I've to cut the clip for you to sort of see it in a different way, and then I've just left the clip in full motion to sort of for you to just enjoy the video and go with the flow, sort of thing. So anyway, without giving too much information away, we're going to start looking at the first clip and talk you through to it, through the clip, and hopefully you get to enjoy it and see what I'm trying to show you. The first section I'm going to show you, carp headbangers, will be like fish which were in a hole in the winter, because obviously the reason I wanted to start in the winter is the fact that that's the most difficult part of the season. So trying to understand what carp are doing within the winter, how they survive and how they switch off, because once again each lake's different. Some lakes it's getting regularly put bait in, like so if you go to linear lakes, there's plenty of anglers going in all year round feeding bait, keeping them active, keeping them under pressure. Yeah. Then there's other lakes which don't get that sort of luxury, and therefore how anglers decide to fish it is a little bit more sporadic, and so therefore the fish sort of act in a different way. And not only that, if there's only carp in that particular lake, then it wouldn't be under pressure through, say, the pressure of a lake with lots of different species in. Hopefully I'm not getting myself lost here. But anyway, the main point I'm trying to get to, there's a reason behind everything at the end of the day, carp headbangers. And I've just tried to understand what are the reasons behind what I see, what's the story behind it, because what you come to learn when you're fishing, you see so many things. For example, a fish topping from the surface, you know, a fish in a fast pace in the margins, fish just soaking the sun up. There's loads of different things you get to see, fully understanding the what's actually taking place and the meaning behind it. I don't think it's quite clear to a lot of anglers out there, and I'm not saying I hold all the answers, because I don't, because everything's an interpretation, and that interpretation is basically what I've seen and captured over the many seasons. It's just a case of I just feel now I'm ready to show it, and hopefully you might see the same thing, and if you don't, then please just sort of let us know. I've just done my best to what I feel I can do and how I can show it. So anyway, we go to the first clip, and I'll just sort of take you through the clips, and eventually hopefully we'll see a pattern, and through those patterns and clips you might sort of pick up on things yourself that you might feel, oh yeah, I didn't know that, or bloody hell, I won't be doing that again. And anyway, I just hope you enjoy it, and thank you very much once again. So anyway, let's go to the first clip. I'm just about to approach the carp hole itself. As you can see, I can only see what's in front of me, Carpheadbangers, so it's very difficult to appreciate what's actually taking place and trying to show this footage. I'm just lowering the camera down to see what's underneath me, and this is just mind-blowing. This is just another world. Moving back now because I was just a little bit taken back by what I was seeing. Just moving back forward. Just trying to get me bearings of what's around me. It's important to remember why carp are actually in this dormant state. Obviously the temperatures are pretty low at this time of year. Food sources are a bit scarce. At the same time, it's just a case of what stimulates them in order to be active in regarding their feeding patterns. Look at this absolutely beautiful mirror. Look at the plates on that. I believe that might be called the pretty one. As you can see, you'll see the contour of the bottom of the shelf. There's a few different layers, to be fair. Look at the size of that. That is a £55 mirror, I believe. As you can see, they're all pretty tight together. Obviously looking for the security within their surroundings. That's why it's important to try and find these particular spots, because we're all no different. We all want our security within our environment, and carp certainly know how to find what they feel is comfortable for themselves. We're all creatures of habit in one way or another. I don't think you'll appreciate how hard it is to try and control this camera at this moment in time. This is so difficult. Just go right to the bottom of that shelf now. Just getting a bit closer. A few carp still around the hole. Just descending right to the bottom now and just basically letting the camera settle down. just moving forward. It's important to see the life within the water layers as well, because there's so much to see that anglers never get to see. Look how tight that is at the bottom there. It's just turning because it knows I'm around. Not in any rush whatsoever. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. What's very interesting about that particular scene, Carpheadbangers, is just how slow life is in the winter time. The carp just didn't seem to be any hurry to do anything, and it just shows you how temperatures play a major factor in regarding how carp respond for that particular time of year. Don't get me wrong, carp just don't stay like that all the time. Somewhere along the line they have to move around and they do have to feed, but I just generally feel temperatures and light make a major factor in regarding, well, they are a major factor in how carp respond to their environments, and it's just interesting to understand how carp have to respond within their environments regarding what food sources are available. So understanding the food sources available will give you an indication of how carp are more likely to feed within that particular environment regarding the environment itself. So anyway, I'll take it into the next scene. It's a daylight video clip. Basically shows carp sitting in the hole again, just basically switched off. There is carp in the surrounding area, and they just basically are in a very inactive state, but I do feel they might have been feeding regarding the bloodworm beds, which are rich in that particular lake at the time. And not only that, I come to learn that there was other things going on within that lake at that particular time. So trying to get an overall perspective of the bigger picture of that particular lake just become apparent as I spent more time trying to figure the lake out itself. So anyway, I'll take you into the next clip and just enjoy it and see what you make of it. It's just interesting how carp sort of are acting within their particular environment at that particular time. So anyway, enjoy. Just moving along in the lake, we're coming up to the carp hole itself. This is a different carp hole from the previous one. You will see a couple of carp pretty stationary. It's totally switched off. But what I come to find out regarding as I'm moving around the particular carp hole, there was a number of carp within the vicinity. So unfortunately you can only see what the camera is pointing at, and when you're moving around you're a bit excited regarding trying to maximise what you hope to see, being honest. but certainly not scared of my presence. I feel as if they felt I was part of their environment. Obviously I didn't want to be too close to them, but it was interesting to see their particular presence within their environment and how they were acting, and they were pretty obviously you can see they were not rushing around, so to speak. Everything seemed to be slow. I think they were feeding within their vicinity because obviously there was a little bit of silt disturbance within the waterways itself. But it just goes to show the difference regarding light and the temperatures and how carp are prepared to be a little bit more active within their environment. Not only that, what I come to learn is that as the lake was that rich in bloodworm bed and midgie flies being so active within December, well, it was the middle of December to be fair. So it was interesting these particular things were taking place at that particular time of year. Now I'm just following this carp. This is absolutely beautiful. Look at it just cruising. No rush whatsoever. I think I'm just losing now. I've come down on these carp just above another hole. Well, what a difference between night and day, eh? Obviously there's a lot to take in between those two video clips. It's really trying to understand the patterns of the carp at that particular time. Obviously there's a lot of factors to consider when it comes to carp and their feeding patterns, and I can appreciate most of the time that influences by temperature, oxygen levels and light factors. Obviously I can appreciate there's a lot of other factors to consider as well, size of the lake and just the nature of its lake within itself. What I found also fascinating for that time of year in December was the amount of natural life that was still available for the carp at that particular time. So it's not necessarily that all life sort of dies in the winter time. As you've seen in the footage, it's quite active and full of life. And I appreciate, I'm not saying all lakes are the same, and once again it's all down to that particular lake. As for the naturals in the lake and what the carp are feeding on, the footage I'm about to show you now just illustrates the abundance of life which was in that particular lake at that time. And obviously you've got to appreciate I only filmed the footage for the time I was there. It'd be nice if I spent a lot more time on that lake and learnt a little bit more about it. but what I did capture told me a pattern in regarding that particular time and what was going on. So anyway, I'll show you what was on offer for the Carp in the way of naturals and things like that, and I'm sure you'll find the footage interesting. So anyway, I'll go back to showing you the next few clips. Well, the next bit of footage you can see now is obviously I've got the camera set in the margin area, and I was just fascinated to see thousands of midgie flies in the middle of December. You just think, wow, what's going on at this particular time of year within this lake? It becomes a bit more apparent when I've done a bit more filming. The next bit of footage is in the middle of the lake. I was in about sort of 5 foot of depth, to be fair, and obviously we're just about to see fresh weed growth. But what was amazing to see was just tens of thousands of just midgie flies just congregating on the weed itself, preparing themselves to go to the surface, and it was just amazing to watch, and it just goes to prove once again that there's a lot of life within a lake, even at this time of year. Just absolutely fascinating. This particular clip, you can see leeches attach themselves to the leaf growth. When I was moving the camera around, it's disturbing the silt area, and the amount of leeches you could see within the water layers was just sort of mind-blowing. You might see them with like looking pretty stringy in how they present themselves. Well, this is just totally amazing. I've never actually seen bloodworm beds underneath the water, to be fair, but when I've come to capture this footage, I just sort of was just blown away by it. Just the richness of the lake. I could understand the difficulties why I was sort of blanking at that particular time. The trough holes. Just goes to show how much presentation is important. a different world. But what's very important is how it all interconnects with each other, how it supports the ecosystem of that within that particular lake. Just goes to show the amount of food available. Well, once again, how fascinating it is to see things from a different perspective. It's important to understand how ecosystems work from one lake to another, but at the same time, they all have familiar patterns to what takes place throughout their seasons. Um, I remember fishing a lake called Whitemere in Shropshire, and I was fishing a peg called the Pump House. This lake's 69 acres in size. It's a triple SI water. It's just in natural, beautiful surroundings, to be fair. But as I was looking across the lake one particular day, I managed to see a bit of a phenomenon, something I've not really seen before in me fishing, to be fair. And but anyway, what took place was I just sort of noticing the birds around me, from ducks, coots, tufties, and so on. And they were sort of coming from every part around the lake and just sort of coming across the lake. And obviously it's a big lake, so it's not like happening at speed. But I just sort of noticed them sort of heading towards the Woodside area. And there was actually absolutely hundreds of them, to be fair. But obviously common sense tells you that angling there's some sort of hatch taking place. And that's why they've all descended or congregated to go to that particular part of the lake. But anyway, this next clip is of a midgie fly hatch. So it just sort of gives you the indication of what's taking place underneath the water of a particular hatch. And then I'd like to go on to something else which I find even more interesting regarding fishing another lake, which is a lake called Swan Lake, and what I come to learn about that. So what's important to understand is that everything is connected, and there is patterns, and the reasons behind them are just, for me, are clear of what's taking place. And but anyway, we'll move on, and I'm sure you'll find it all interesting. So anyway, let's go back. Well, as you can see, Carpheadbangers, this is what a midgy fly hatch looks like underneath the surface. I decided to spend a bit of time getting a downward view in what was taking place from what I've previously recorded on previous sessions. The life is just massive, and this is just like the midgy flies from the bloodburn beds. I tried to investigate a little bit further in trying and capture the midgy flies actually coming from the little holes at the bottom of the lake, because you'll see just thousands and thousands and thousands of holes. They're just millions of little burrows full of life. Well, it's amazing while we're trying to crack the code and how we link one thing to another. What I'd like to show you is a video clip of a situation which took place in late November on a lake called Swan Lake. Now, to be fair, the conditions were tough. No one was catching fish. But what I did notice was a number of carp topping the surface on that lake. I was just trying to understand what was taking place, because in normal situations, in sort of late November, winter time, tough conditions, most anglers say, "Oh, I've just seen a fish top there." But how we come to try and understand what was taking place for that to do what it did, and to be fair, it happened in a number of different places, it just got me more sort of inquisitive. So I decided to get the underwater camera out and investigate, and to my total amazement, once again, I'm seeing a picture linking one story to the next. So anyway, I'd like to show you that, and you can obviously see how the cycle of life is all connected to one another, and how things are responding to each other, shall we say. So anyway, let me carry on.
It's good, isn't it? It's just amazing to think how many battles are taking place in our lakes for carp to survive. It's just not about carp surviving and just trying to sustain themselves. But there's many other factors to consider. Obviously, there's bream, there's roach, there's tench, perch, and if you go over to France, you've got catfish. You've got catfish in England as well, but you've also got the sturgeon and zander. You can just go on. The way I look at it is they're all interconnected. They all need to survive, and they all have patterns. But when it comes to carp, one of the things I like observing is, and I just think it's just essential, to be fair, is their movements. Obviously, when we're sitting on the lakes and we're looking for the signals, from a carp jumping and a carp moving along the margins, I don't think we really get it. We just make a simple interpretation. There's a carp, when there's obviously a bigger picture going on within these lakes. Anyway, the next few clips I'd like to show you are obviously of carp patterns and movements, and then leading you into a story, because you've got to understand this is the fast the cycle moves on from winter, and then we come into spring, and then light levels are changing, life wants to grow and flourish, and then obviously, in my opinion, the battle's taking place in regarding each species in its own right, trying to survive in its own right. But anyway, let's enjoy the next few clips, and I'm sure it'll have many interpretations, and it's fishing. Anyway, let's enjoy it. Well, guys, there's many different interpretations between those different sequences of clips. Obviously, you've got a single carp on patrol, you've got them pairing up, you've got them in packs, you've got them leisurely just sort of basking in their surroundings. Each scene and each clip tells you a different story. It's just a case of how you want to interpret that in regard what you particularly see at the time, because I'm sure at some point, whatever lake you decide to fish, you might have seen something similar. Um, for me, the peak of the cycle of carp and any other species within a particular season will always be down to getting to the spawning time. Everything wants to reproduce. The lakes are just full of life. Everything wanting to survive and progress to the next season, and it's just for me, it's just a rapid process they all go through in order just to get bigger and bigger and bigger, because they're all basically food for any species which are in that particular lake. And as I said, carp are predator fish. In my opinion, every fish in a lake is a predator fish in relation to what they feel they need to, or what they feel they can cope with in regard to how they need to survive and eat food sources. What I want to do now is, obviously, I want to sort of expand a little bit more in regarding footage of what you're seeing. As I said before, each clip tells you a different story. So by expanding these clips, hopefully I'll be able to explain what I've seen and what I've captured. And it's just all part of trying to crack the code at the end of the day. So anyway, we'll just carry on and enjoy. Fish patterns are generally dictated by water temperatures. Obviously, as the season progresses, and probably around about the April time, temperatures are generally sort of right for the smaller species of fish to start spawning around about 17 degrees, even low as 8 degrees to be fair. For me, the smaller species are generally the perch and roach, which are the first to be spawning, and then that'll be followed through by the likes of bream and carp. What's interesting to understand about those different stages is how the different species of fish all interconnect with each other in order to sort of contain the cycle moving forward, because what you generally find is that they're all eating each other in regarding those certain times of year, and obviously each fish has more activity going on in with itself in order to sort of progress moving forward within the season. Obviously, as you can see here, there's fish moving in the margins and patrolling the margins, but generally, if you were an angler and you was to see that taking place, I don't think you would appreciate why a carp was sort of moving in that particular way at that particular time. But as the footage progresses, you'll see how the cycle is unfolding, and how certain carp are reacting regarding that time of year, and within that cycle of how all the fish are all interacting with each other. They're certainly having a rattle in there, carpetbangers. And bream, look at them.
carp are coming to feed on bream as well, you know, the eggs.
It's amazing the activity which is taking place underneath the surface. Obviously the frenzy of trying to progress, trying to compete, trying to survive are obviously in the months of April, May, June. I can appreciate they can progress later on into the year, but that would all be down to the temperatures of that time. As I've said before, the cycle of life is different from each species. They don't all spawn at the same time. They all have a chance to compete with each other. They all have a chance to survive. The most important thing for us anglers is obviously understanding the cycle of carp and how they come to interact with all these different species. Once the bream spawn, it's the carp's turn. Only if we had a crystal ball to see each sequence of events which take place in our lakes, carpheadbangers. Obviously, the few video clips you've seen there was of seeds taking place in April with the bream. And obviously there was a lot of activity in regarding the perch and roach and carp within the vicinity. As each cycle takes place, because each species of fish has its own cycle of when they decide to spawn, there's literally just millions and billions of friggin' eggs all over the place in regarding their spawning areas. And basically each species is just feeding off each other because they don't want to see other species surviving within that particular lake because they just see them as competition. Well, there's many different stages in the cycle to lakes, carpheadbangers. Obviously different fish go through different stages throughout that cycle. When it comes to the carp have obviously got to go through their spawning ritual. The footage I like to show you now is obviously carp going through a little bit of spawning activity, and then trying to understand how the carp progress from there and how the cycle moves on. But anyway, it's all fascinating footage. It's all new in regarding what I've ever shown, that's for sure. So anyway, I'd like to carry on and continue in trying to crack the code, so to speak. Well, how beautiful was that? How do we move forward in the peak cycle of a carp? Obviously, the peak cycle for carp is in order to reproduce. That's the evolution of life. We always need to reproduce to move forward. What I love in regarding the footage I try and capture is obviously the many battles which are going on within each species in a lake. what's always so fascinated me is how when they've reached their peak in the cycle is how the rest of the season pans out in regarding how carp need to survive. Because as I've said, it's not just all about carp eating boilies. They eat a lot of other things, and it's just understanding their cycle and their patterns. Because obviously we blank many times on a lake, and we obviously got to try and understand what those potential problems might be occurring. The next bit of footage I'm going to start showing carp headbangers is basically carp in packs, I call them, because I believe that carp are predator fish, and they hunt in packs in order to survive and gain that weight that carp need to maintain, basically. Because at the end of the day, carp are like 30, 40, 50, 60 pounds. Certainly got to eat a lot of protein in order to maintain that body mass. So for me, the evolution and the cycle of what goes on within lakes and how they need to sustain themselves is an ecosystem within itself. And so therefore, trying to see carp going through those processes has always been part of what I've been interested in trying to understand, so to speak. But anyway, let me carry on with the footage, and I'll just let it just carry on and how I've presented it. So let's enjoy again.
It's all about the life, isn't it? Billions of it. You just got to find it.
Now, if there's one thing carp love, that is tadpoles. The abundance of tadpoles in lakes is just phenomenal. They're just rich in protein and all the nutrients that carp need. In fact, I'd probably say one tadpole is probably the equivalent of 10 boilies. What abundance of life and free food. What you'll find fascinating about tadpoles, they have the ability to sense food and the presence of predators and adjust their foraging activity according to their critical survival. Well, the beautiful side of nature, there's obviously a lot to take in when you see those video clips. For me, it's really trying to understand when those sequences are taking place in our lakes, how can we maximise it as anglers in order to decide what type of fishing you want to do, whether it be surface fishing, zig fishing, bottom bait fishing. The beautiful side of nature for me gives us those clues, to be fair, because obviously, we're not all catching all the time. There's a lot of times we do blank, but do we actually consider the impact of what's actually going underneath the surface in regard to what's giving us these difficulties? For me, a lot of anglers are too readily to just accept it's all about a certain type of bait or it's a number of wraps, and basically a program to sort of think in the wrong way about the fishing, rather than freeing the minds up to sort of look at nature and give you the clues that way and how to approach and maximise those opportunities. I want to move on to a number of clips now. I'm not really going to talk you through the clips. I just want you to enjoy them, to be fair. For me, the one of the most beautiful bit of underwater footage I've managed to capture. The main thing is when you're looking underneath the surface and you're trying to understand the patterns of carp and how they're moving, and what's you're just basically trying to see what's taking place. For me, this footage is self-evident of what's taking place. The first part of the footage is not like overly clear, but you can sort of see a general pattern of how carp are moving. It come apparent, to be fair, as you get a little bit later into the footage of what was really taking place with why the carp were in that vicinity. As I stated earlier into the footage, carp are predator fish, and for me the footage was just absolutely mind-blowing. Anyway guys, I'll let you enjoy it and we'll just carry on and we'll see what you think. What I'll do at the end of the footage is I'm going to cut a few of the clips out, and hopefully you've picked up on it as you've viewed the footage. So it's important to really just sort of focus, and hopefully you see what I get to show you at the end of it. So anyway guys, we'll go back and enjoy it. Well, how beautiful it is to see nature at its best. Obviously, there's a lot to be taken in from that footage. And I actually have just separated a number of clips to sort of explain them a little bit. Obviously, everything's an interpretation, what you see, and I can only interpretate it what I think I see. But these three clips are put aside. I just think they're quite interesting in themselves. They're not long in the time frames, but if you look at them and I try and explain them to you in the way I see them, perhaps you might see the same thing. I don't know, you know. If you see something different or you don't get what I'm trying to say, then, you know, I do apologise, but, and, you know, please express your views because I do like hearing what other anglers have to say. Anyway, this first clip, it shows a carp hitting my camera. To be fair, I just put the camera in at the water at that particular time, and it just sort of worked out the way it did for some reason. Some things, the clips just work out that way, and then when you sort of get a team, you go, wow, did I just capture that? But anyway, the carp managed to hit the camera, and as you look at the film footage, you'll see some fry coming from the right top of the screen. But if you're quick enough, you'll see a fry which is being separated from the group, and it comes across the middle of the screen, and then you'll immediately see two carp chasing it. That for me, I just thought was like mind-blowing in regarding actually seeing carp chasing the fry. How they sort of split a pack of fry up. I don't know. A lot of this footage you've never actually seen before, so you can. There's not the sort of a record where you can sort of cross-reference. You know what I'm saying? It's all sort of exploratory and new sort of thing. Then the next clip will be is where my camera hits the screen, the bottom of the lake. And as it kicks up, you'll see three carp, which I believe are the same three carp which were in the first clip. And it's like they're in at pace again, chasing something, but you don't quite see what they're chasing. And then the third clip is just quite obvious in itself. You see a load of fry coming around the bend of a corner of the lake, and then you see the pack of carp chasing them. That for me was just like sealed it for me. It was just like absolutely out of this world, and just sort of just fitted in perfectly in regarding how I'm trying to present this video to you in regarding trying to crack the code. Obviously, I've been trying to take you through different parts of the season, different times, and trying to explain things as it is. But anyway, here we go, and I'll show you those clips. As you can see, the carp's just hit my camera. It's just moved out of the shot to the right of the screen. If you're quick now, the fry's just coming into the centre of the shot and going to the right of this out of the shot, and then the two carp in pursuit. This footage is just truly mind-blowing. I'm just observing the water layers. Unfortunately, the camera just sort of hits the bottom of the lake bed, but as you'll see, as the camera tilts up forwards, you'll see three carp at pace going past, and then what unfolds is just truly magic. Clearly to see that the carp are in chase of the pack of fry within the waterways themselves. This for me is just like never been seen before. Just totally inspiring, just totally mind-blowing, I hope you really enjoy. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Well, guys, all good things come to an end. I hope you appreciate how I've tried to present what I have to yourselves. It's obviously got many different interpretations. There's a lot more I could show you, I assure you. Obviously, it's just about all the time. I've put a lot of late nights trying to present this to yourselves. For me, it's just trying to open anglers' minds, giving them a different perspective to what's normally presented to yourselves out there. And to be fair, it's something I'd really like to continue. As you know, I enjoy my filming side of the fishing, and there's a lot more to offer. So hopefully you continue with your support. I appreciate you all purchasing the DVD and or the download, I should say, and hope it may continue. In the meantime, guys, I'd just like to say thank you very much once again. It really does mean a lot. See you all soon, eh? Bye for now.